Hello everyone and welcome to our next exercise, Introduction to Programming with Java. And finally we arrived to our most interesting and most important topic in our course. And this is about advanced object-oriented programming. So today, as usually, we will first cover big picture. Then we will dive into programming, and afterwards we will just get briefly to the homework that you'll receive. As you see, this topic is already fourth one within our scope for this course, and the advanced object-oriented programming concepts, they cover the following topics within Java Foundation exams of Oracle certification. So these are Java Basics OOP, Java Methods, and Classes and Constructors. Within OCP Part 1 exam, we are covering a lot of topics that are within our scope today. You see them now on the screen. So the tasks that we have today, they are very broad. Since the concepts that we will cover today, that we will apply in practice, that we will see how to use them in our Java programs, they are very broad. And they're really very, very interesting. So let's get started with the first one. And this is overloading of methods. So actually we have already seen the overloading in praxis, and that was our book task from our last exercise. So if you remember, we have written the code about book, the class book with our several variables, title, release year, copy sold, and the default here. And then we created several constructors. And afterwards we have written our main methods. So actually, when we were creating our constructor, we were creating 3 of them. Here the first one, here the second one, and here the third one. So we actually used already the overloading in praxis. The overloading itself, it consists of 2 types. There is overloading of constructors and overloading of methods. Now we see the overloading of constructors in praxis. So overloading is when we use the same name for more than one constructor in a class, in the same class. So here we have a book and we have several constructors with the same name. That is, we are applying overloading. Additionally, the number of arguments should be different, or the list of arguments. For example, we can have two constructors with 2 arguments. However, the arguments should be different. For example, we have here one constructor string t and integer r. Another constructor could be integer for release year is integer exactly, so integer for release year and integer for copies all sold. So the number of arguments can be the same, 2 and 2. However, the list of arguments is different because these are 2 different arguments, 2 pairs of different arguments. And important is to remember that the argument availability here determines behavior. So depending on which arguments we are writing inside, so when we are calling constructor, for example, where we do it here. So here and here, the corresponding type of constructor is called. Okay, so one more point is here this keyword that we were using here. We were using this to call the constructor from above. So this keyword, this is used for our for usage of code, because we don't want to write the same code several times, so we are using here this keyword. However, we will come a bit closer to the keyword this additionally. So let's come back to our overloading. As I already said, there are two types of overloading. The first one is constructor overloading, and you see here how it is applied in practice. The next type is method overloading, and now we will create a new class that is called method overloading, and we will see how it is used in practice. So let's assume that we have the following variables. The first one is string title, then we have string author, boolean is read, and integer number of readings. So the method overloading is very similar to constructor overloading. It is the concept when we are using the same name for the method, and we are defining we're specifying the different list of arguments inside of those methods. So let us now apply the method overloading. Let's say that we have one method that is public void read, and the statements inside are is read equals to true, and number of readings are being incremented. Now let's create another method when we are using the overloading. So it means that we are using the same name, everything is the same, public void read, and what we need to do, we need to have different list of arguments. So if we here we did not have any arguments, so in this case here we have to write some arguments. Let's say that we have integer I as our argument, and the statements inside are is read equals to true, and number of readings will be added and assigned again to number of readings, and added I to it. So now you see the method overloading in practice. Here we have two methods with the same name and different arguments, list of arguments inside. So if we would now, for example, would like to write the same method but without any arguments, so that would be using the same type as here, you would receive here an error, duplicate method read in type method overloading. That's why this is not valid. So remember, first, there are two types of overloading: constructor overloading and method overloading. And in both cases, overloading means that we are using the same name for the method or constructor, but the different list of arguments. The next small topic is about usage of this keyword. Let us create a new class with the name employee. So there are two types of usage of keyword this. The first one is optional and the second one is mandatory. So first, let's have a look on the optional use. Let's define two variables. The first one is string name and the second one is integer age. So that this keyword, it is placed inside an instance method or constructor to refer to the object whose method is being called. So first, let us use this, and first type is optional. Use of this. Let us define a constructor public employee that takes one argument, that is string first name. And now we want to assign the argument that will be inserted here in brackets when the constructor will be called, and we want that this first name argument or parameter will be assigned to this variable name of the class employee. So in this case we're writing this, then the variable of the class, that is name, and assigning the value of the parameter first name. So that's all. So this is the optional use of this. Important is to remember that you are using this keyword inside of instance method. Last exercise we had a look on types of methods, and instance method was also there. So if you don't remember, just open the lecture slides from the last lecture. So the second type is mandatory type. And here, mandatory use of this. And here, let's imagine that we have another constructor that is also public employee one. The name of the constructor should match the name of the class. That's why I'm putting here 1. And we have the two parameters that are string name and integer age. So now we want to do the same, so we are just using the same structure as here. We are referring to our class variable name that is here using the keyword this, and we are assigning the argument, the parameter name that is used now here as parameter variable name, and the same for the age. This age, the name of this variable, it's actually this, the instance variable that was declared at the beginning of our code, is equals to age, and this age is now this parameter variable that is declared as inside of parameters for our constructor employee. And now you see two cases. They look pretty similar. However, the difference is that here we use the different variable name for our parameter for constructor as the name of our instance variable. And here we're using the same name. So let's have a look on the same code if we would not use this keyword. So we will we'll first copy this and out comment it with Ctrl/, paste it, and we are taking here this. You see, this code is still valid because the name corresponds to the name of this variable, and this is the references here pretty clear, and the name and the first name corresponds to the name of the parameter variable. So this works very nice. Let's do the same for our second constructor. So we are taking here this. What happens now? First, we have some notes from Eclipse. The assignment to variable name has no effect. Why did it happen? So now, first, what we have here, we declared here parameter variables. These parameter variables, as you remember from our last exercise, will be now used here inside as our local variables. It means that these local variables, they will not be accessible from outside. So when we are using here name equals to name, Java understands this, that we are assigning the name to itself, to the same name. We don't have any reference here to our instance variable string name that we have defined at the beginning of our class. That's why when you have the same names for your parameter variables, for your constructor, and the name of your instance variable, then the use of this is mandatory. So I will comment it out and write this is not valid. And this example is valid. You can also use this keyword not only in constructor but also in regular methods. For example, you have a method public void print name that takes no parameters, but it has one statement, system out print line, and it prints. So here we want to print the name, and when we want to print the name, we want to point exactly to this name, to the name in this class, and we are writing this name. So here we are pointing to this name in the same class. So here in our optional use of this, let us comment out our second option and take back our this option. So this part, especially this keyword, can be read in the following way. The name of variable of this employee object being constructed should be giving the value of the first name. And here in this case, the name of this employee object being constructed should be given the name, the variable of this name. Okay, so what do you have to remember about our about use of this? First, there are two types of usage: optional usage and mandatory usage. This is the second type. If the name of your parameter variable and instance variable, if the names are different, then the usage of this keyword is optional. If the name of your parameter variable and instance variable, if these two names are different, if are the same, then the usage of this is mandatory. Okay, so the next topic is encapsulation. And encapsulation is very interesting topic. You can think about encapsulation as data hiding. So what you want to do? You want to hide your methods and your variables that are in a class. You want to hide them using encapsulation. You want to hide them from some outside person, or maybe you want to define which person can read data, which person can overwrite the data. So you want to define the rights also. The main idea of encapsulation is that you are making your variables that you are defining in a class, that you are declaring in a class, you are making them private. And in this way, you will be able to access these variables only from within the same class. So as you have already learned on the lecture, there are several access modifiers: private, no modifier, protected, and public. And when we are talking about about making a variable private, that is here, then you see that we can access this private variable only from the same class. Let us come to an example. We are creating now a class person. And suppose we have three several variables. First one is string, name. Second one is character, gender. And the last one is integer, age. So now these three instance variables, they can be accessed from outside of the class. So if we are creating now a program, let us create person1 program. With main method. So here we have our main method, and in our main program we are now creating an object person1p that is new person1. So we have now object p, some person p. And when we want to access these variables, then let us use system out print line for this purpose. And we want to write that the name of the person P is, and in order to access the variable that is here of this person, we are using the object. So we are writing p dot name, and now we are specifying that we want to access the name of object p, plus is and we want to know the gender of the person, p gender, plus and is years old. So now we want to access the age, years old. Okay, so now we are executing, and we see null is and so on, because we actually don't have any did not assign any variable names, so we did not initialize. So let us do this, and let us write several constructors for this purpose. So first we have person that takes 3 parameters: string, name, integer age, and character gender. So you see that now we use the same names as are here. That's why we have to use this keyword when we are pointing to our instance variables. This name equals to name, this age equals to age, and this gender equals to gender. So let us check whether everything is correct. Person 1, that's why. So this is our first one, and let us define another constructor, person, that takes only name, string name, and we want this, well, let's just use the first one. Okay, so now when we are creating here our person, our object, we have only one constructor, so now we have to put here inside the values for these 3 parameters. So first we are putting name, and the name should be string, so we are putting in double quotes Adam, and separating comma. Let's say that Adam is 25 years old, and the last is character, and character should be in single quotes, and he is a man. And now when we will print it out, we will see Adam is as a man and is 25 years old. Okay, so this was only at the beginning. In this case, every class that is, every person that has access to this class, to this main class, can access these variables, or not only from within the class, but also from outside packages. And maybe you don't want these variables to be readable or to be rewritable in this way. And in this case, when you want to make the access not so direct. You are writing here private. We are changing the access modifier, private, and here also private. And now you have these three variables private here. If we will now try to execute our code, we'll receive an error. So let us read what kind of error do we have here. The field of name, gender and age is not visible. The reason is that these variables are private now. If we want to access them, we have to use getters and setters. So getters and setters, these are some specific methods that has to be created for every variable. So let's now create these getters and setters for every variable. So they look in the following way. First, we will create now the getter for name variable. This will be now public string get name, and this is a return type method. That's why we are returning a value that is name. This is the method that is called getter. So first we are defining the access to this method. In our case now it is public. We are defining second the data type of the variable that will be returned. That is the same data type of the variable, string in this case, and the name of the method that usually, according to general convention, you are writing the first word get and then the name of the variable that you are going to get. The next method will be setter, and this is void method that doesn't return any value. And in this case, you're using set and the name of the variable, set name, and this name equals to name. Ah, yeah, because we have to write here inside string name, of course. And now we are writing the same. So these two methods, getter and setter, were defined for one variable name. Now we are writing these methods for for each variable here. So next will be public character get gender and we are returning gender, and our public void setter method set gender, and we are returning, and we don't return anything. We are setting the gender and putting here character gender. So these are two methods for our gender variable, and the last two methods are for our age variable. So first will be public integer get age, and we are returning age, and public void set age, and this is integer age, and we are setting to our age, the value of the parameter age. And now we are done. So now you see here the two methods, getter and setter, for every variable, for every private variable here. And now you can use these methods to access your variables. So now you see this one is already not correct. I will just comment this line out. In order to access now the name, we need to use our getter method. So first, what we want to do, we want to print out the values. Actually, we want to print out the same line, but the one that is now possible to print out. So in order to access each of these variables, we need to use getter. So p dot, and now when you just press dot, you see the methods that are available to this our object person. And you see here also get name. You can also write it by yourself. Get gender, and don't forget the empty brackets afterwards, showing that this is a method. Get what was the last age. And we're executing, and we see Adam is the man and is 25 years old. If we want now to change the values of the variables, we have to use setter method. So in order to access the setter method, we are using the same convention as here, the same idea. We are putting the name of the object, p, then dot, and we see all methods that are available. And here you see also setters. So set name, let's use this one. And you see that Eclipse is telling you that this value that you are going to put here now is of string data type. So for you, it's indication that you have to use here the double quotes. So the name is now Nico, and we want to set, well, the age. Maybe let's just write another Julia. We are setting the gender. So as you remember, the gender is of character data type, so we have to use here single quotes. This is feminine, and we are putting the age here. We're setting the age, that is integer, and you're just writing the age here. So now you set this new values to the same object p, and we want to print this out. We want to see the output. So we see now that the Julia is F and is 20 years old. So actually we are using here the same object that we and to this object we have assigned another values using setter method.